Hello, dreamers, and welcome back to the Sand and Stars podcast, a podcast that has been created to inspire generations to dream. And we have conversations with amazing, interesting, audacious human beings who are doing things that are out of this world, things that you'd never have probably ever heard of or thought about. And I'm really excited for today's episode. Today we are going to be talking, or I keep saying we. I am going to be talking to Chidirim. So Chidirim is the founder of the Looty Project, where they are repatriating African art from British museums using 3D technology and converting them into NFTs that can then be experienced digitally across the continent, across the world. So for those who don't know, there's been a whole movement, and I'm sure you've seen it on the news, where British European museums really are giving back the artifacts, the art that was stolen through colonialism, through several wars. And so what Chidi is doing is literally, because it's not all the art that is being returned, what he's doing is repatriating that art and using technology to do so. So I came across Chidi and I realized, I said he has to come on. He has to come on. What he's doing is audacious. It's so out there. How did he come up with the idea? What is his story, his journey, and the lessons that he's learned and learning along the way? So let's get started. So question one is always, who is Chidi? So take it on, Chidi. Who are you?
So yes, my name's Chidi. Full name is Chidirim. That's my full name, Chidirim Nwaubani. I'm a creative.
Sounds like a song.
Oh, thank you. It is kind of a song, I guess, as these names go. But yeah, as the way I see myself is as a creative, right? Because I do so many different things and have so many different creative outlets. It's hard for me to define myself. Maybe if you read my Twitter, it says that I'm a multidisciplinary designer, because I don't like to put myself into one pocket, but also like I was saying before, I get many ideas. I get a lot of ideas, and these ideas, they come to me. But my opinion on what ideas are is that ideas just exist within the ether of the world, and ideas are there simply for somebody to take them. It's not just because you've got the idea doesn't mean that you own that idea either. So the ideas are just waiting for their hosts to execute that idea. And like I was saying before, have you ever had an idea that you thought about and you're like, that's actually a really good idea. And you just sat on it, gone to sleep, and you did nothing about it. And maybe the next week you see somebody who's got some award winning, in Forbes 30 under 30 with your idea, and you're now angry because somebody's taken your idea, but actually you shouldn't be angry. The idea came to you, and you chose not to take it. So this idea of digital repatriation came to me, and I chose to take it. And yeah, that's the Looty Project, and that's what I want to discuss with you and talk to you about today.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to talk about the Looty Project because where did I see this? So one of my friends called Mo had posted the BBC story on her WhatsApp stories, and I watched it. And as soon as I watched it, I told her, Lord, have mercy. What? This is amazing. And I told her, I must meet this person. This story must be told. So tell me about Looty, and what was the inspiration behind this? What was the trigger that got you to this point that you decided that you want to start the process of the repatriation of African art and using NFT to do this?
So the genesis of this project, like I said, was the idea, right? So, as I had been kind of within the crypto space, and looking at a lot of the projects and a lot of the NFT projects that came out. And honestly, a lot of them didn't really speak to me. A lot of them I couldn't really relate to, either like stylistically or just from a like ideas point of view of what they represent. So I was like, man, I really want to get involved in this, because the technology is cool and it's something that we've never seen before. But I need to do something that, if I'm going to get into this, I need to do something that has meaning and has purpose. And then, like I said, this idea came to me. I was like a host for this idea. It came to me, and I remember talking to my friend. I was like, what if we stole back all of the artwork that's been taken from Africa, but we did it digitally? And then my friend was like, oh, like his face just like, this idea, like, it was like, okay, we need to do this. We need to do this now. And that really sparked off the energy that I needed. So, and then it was just, for a long time, it was like research into how could this be possible, because on the first side of it, we're looking at like, morally, if you steal something that's stolen, that's already stolen, from a moral point of view, yes, you're right. But from a legal point of view, that's actually a wrong thing to do. Because let's say, for example, you came into my house now and you stole my TV. And then I'm walking down your road and I can see you enjoying my TV, yeah? And then I now break into your house and take back that TV that you stole from me. Any person with common sense or like morals would say, yes, you did the right thing, take back what's yours. But legally, I committed a crime in breaking into your house, right? Because I had into your house, I'm trespassing. So there's a whole legal side of this that we had to get, and that side was so interesting to have to go into this and look at the new laws that were actually created after a lot of the artwork had been stolen, to protect these British museums from the fact that they are holding stolen artifacts. So there's a lot of things that when I was researching, it's like, wow, they literally created this law to protect themselves, right? It's like you stole my TV, and then you create a new law saying all TVs that have been stolen
steal this TV back
before the 16th of August 2022 is now void, and TVs can have them forever. Things to the tune of that have been created to protect these institutions and museums. So one thing that I know about the law as well is that the law is always, traditionally, the laws have been slow when it comes to technology, just because the people that work within the legal environment they're not in the law and tech world. They're just two different worlds,
separate,
right? So they're typically quite slow, and they're usually not very they don't have like a lot of knowledge when it comes to these things. So then when you're looking at the NFTs, it's a whole new world. And from a legal point of view, there is the same laws that protected them when they came to Africa, when they came to Nigeria hundreds of years ago, are the same laws that protect me today, in what I do. So now, legally, what I'm doing is fine. And legally, what I'm doing, there's no issues. It's a legal process of repatriating artwork. So it's kind of like we've got them from that perspective. We also have them from the moral perspective at the same time. So we're using a technology called LiDAR technology. It's where you make 3D scans, and those 3D scans will literally create replicas like for like of anything that you scan. So these are things that are used for like films. A lot of it's used for like computer games and things like that. So we're using that same technology to do the digital heist, and that heist and that part of the of the Looty Project, I think, is something that is very special. And I also see it as part of like my artistic process, is actually physically go into the museum, entering the museum, and taking back what is rightfully ours. That process, because I could have easily just gone onto the internet and, you know, remade the Benin bronzes, for example, from pictures that I've seen online. But it's that merge, right, between the physical world and the digital world is what's really important about this project. We went into the British Museum, we took the scans, nobody said a thing. We had masks on, we had balaclavas, and we did that, and it's
no,
like, yeah,
you had balaclavas on.
To the British Museum with balaclavas on, and we stole back stolen artwork, right? So it's that part of the Looty Project which makes it so special. And then the next there's some really interesting things about some of the artwork, because artwork has been returned and is being returned at the moment. But one interesting thing that I've found is that when you're thinking about the digital versions of those artworks, so I believe it was the French that had previously returned several pieces of artwork to some of their ex-colonies. But inside let's say inside some of the small print that they had is that they had already made digital scans of those artworks, and that the digital pieces they get to keep. So you're thinking about a situation where you've made this promise to give back the physical, but they still keep the copyrights to the digital. And it's like that's just wrong, right? If you're giving back, you could also have the digital copies as well. And with that being said, it's like something that we really need to think about, because today the digital has not surpassed the physical when it comes to art and when it comes to artifacts. That's not the case today. But we will be looking at a world, whether it's our children or our children's children, where digital artifacts, digital artwork, and digital things have more value than physical things. And that fact is something that I think is very important to us and very important to the Looty Project, because it's almost like we're giving a clean slate. And the thing about the digital is that there's something with technology that also has a kind of especially with like Web3 and things, it has this kind of air of like decolonialism to it, where it's a fresh place. We don't have all of the baggage that we have from before.
It's not been corrupted yet. It
hasn't been corrupted yet. So it hasn't been corrupted yet. And that's the thing where we need to really, I think it's anyone who is in that position to maybe steer the ship in the right direction, for us not to make the same mistakes and just to create new institutions that are the same as the institutions that we had before. It's actually your responsibility to steer the ship in the right direction. And that's what we're trying to do, because we truly believe that there's going to be a day where the physical surpasses, so where the digital surpasses the physical. So yeah, when we were looking at it from that angle, we were like, wow, okay, this definitely needs to happen.
So how many pieces of art have you repatriated so far?
So at the moment, there's been 25 pieces, which is from the Benin Bronzes collection. We're also working on another project with an Egyptian archaeologist, where we're actually going to be working on the Rosetta Stone, which is going to be a really big piece. And then we're also working with a museum in Rwanda. And another, well, this project is coming in 2023, and another art institute from Kenya, and we're going to put together like the West, the East, and merge them together in like a metaverse. Oh. So the place where everybody can actually go and really like visit these pieces in their original form.
Yeah.
Because a lot has been taken away, over the years. But when you see them in their original form, and added to that is this new like form that they have, which is the digital form. And there's a lot of things that we can do now that we have this technology. So it's just like imagine a metaverse where it's a merge of the old and the new. So we're actually creating new artifacts with the reference of the ancient artifacts that have been stolen.
Yeah, and it's so, it really is. You really did grab onto the idea, because it would be an idea that someone would think too much work, and there's legalese behind it of what would the process be, and you just went for it, and I think that's impressive, and that's why I like having conversations with people like you. But my question now is, so you've talked about you had the idea, but what was the journey that led you to that point, right? So I always say, like in hindsight, everything makes sense in hindsight. So decisions that you made, I'm like, you can go as far as childhood. Who is Chidi as a child? What did Chidi want to be when he grows up? And how this journey has taken you to that point where you were able to have the knowledge of, okay, so I can do this with NFTs and technology plus my creative element and bring them together. So what's your journey been like?
Wow. So I guess in terms of my creative journey, where shall I start? So I guess my creative journey first started when I was around the age of 13. And I started like designing basically with computer games. I started like designing my own computer games.
At 13, started early.
Yeah, very early. It was very basic stuff, but I was more into the graphic side than than the actual coding side. I was more into the design and the way things look. And I've always had a kind of like creative mind, whether it be like design, music, fashion, all these different things. And then I grew up in the UK, but I'm Nigerian. So every time we would go back home for like summers, go back home during Christmas, and I remember the first time my uncle took me to a museum in Umuahia, and I remember being in the museum and just thinking, I mean, to be honest, I didn't have any other reference of a museum, right? Until I came back to the UK and I went to the British Museum, and I would see the difference between the museums back home and then the museums in London. Also, you would start to see like, wait, this is from here, which is like very close to where I'm from, or these pieces are from here, and then you would start to question like, why are these here? How did they get there? Also, it's very well put together in the British Museum, the way they had, and I mean, many of our museums in Africa, just because of the lack of funding, just don't have that same level. So you start to see, and then when they say ignorance is bliss. And it definitely is. So when you start to understand the stories behind how these items got there, it starts to make you angry, right?
Yeah.
And it's really something like, and the problem is that a lot of people, especially, I think most Africans, like, no, most Africans in the diaspora, they know where these things come from. We all know. But if you think of most people that are like indigenous to like Europe, or America, not indigenous to America, but indigenous to Europe, they don't know, right? They won't know where these things come from, and they won't know the history. They just believe that maybe it was like donated or something like that.
It's just an exotic piece from an exotic land, but not how it was acquired.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's always been something that's been in the back of my mind. But in terms of after that, my creative process, I studied like art, but then I also studied business. I studied a course called graphic information design, which is like the design of information, basically. I went on after that to like work for a few agencies, and I started my own clothing brand after that. And then after the clothing brand, I then went to work after the clothing brand, things didn't really go so well. But it's like one of those failures that ended up being something that was like a good thing. Then
Fail forward.
And then exactly, it was just a redirection. And then I went on to work for Burberry. And then when I was working at Burberry, I was working in the tech team there. And that's where I've kind of like moved more into like the tech industry, as a product designer. But I've always been doing like projects. I've always had like side projects that I've been doing, and that kind of like led, as various other like jobs have like led me up to the point of today where again this ideas come to me, and I was like, okay, this is something that's like purposeful, and something that taps into that same boy that was in the museum in Umaye and saw that and then saw some of the things that are from Nigeria in the British Museum as a boy. It tapped into that same person, and thus you have like the Looty Project.
Wow. And when you say it, I think I read Looty, but I hadn't connected it. So is the name from like loot, like looting?
Yes and no. So the name is actually like it has multiple meanings, right? So Looty in a sense does come from like loot and looting, but I am fully aware and understand that like looting is a violent act, right? And it's a thing of violence, but we're doing it in a non-violent way, right? But the actual Looty, the word Looty comes from, it's like a historical reference. So before the British were stealing from Africa, they actually began their thievery in China. Yeah. So what is now modern day Beijing, they stole many expensive like artifacts, really rare pieces of china, but one of the things that was stolen was a dog, a Pekingese lion dog, which at the time had never been seen before in Europe. So they stole this dog, and when it came back to England, the Queen at the time named that dog Looty because it was part of the loot.
Wow.
And that dog was called Looty as like in like a playful way. So it's obviously it's like has like so many different meanings, but obviously she acknowledged that this thing was stolen, and she acknowledged what the British Empire were doing at that time. So when it came to the British Empire landing in Africa, they had already a lot of the armies had already, with their expeditions, had already been like wise to this process of we can go to this place, steal from them because of our advanced weaponry, and a lot of the loot, as they will call it, we could then go and sell in Europe and make a lot of money. And it did make a lot of people very wealthy.
Yeah, wow. I did not know about that story. Learning something new every day.
Yeah.
So, all right. So your journey all the way through, were there moments, because you've done several things. You're a dream catcher. You catch them, you run with them, which I think is very admirable as well. Because I think sometimes we're really afraid, because we're afraid to fail. But I think one thing that I'm getting from you is try. You know what? I have the idea. Try and do it. Go for it. Which is really fantastic. So my question for you would be, has there been a moment, as you have been in this process of creating Looty and the repatriation of art, where you felt like, oh, it's too much. I'm almost at the edge.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Because as you can imagine, this is something I have no investors. I've got no like funding for this project. Nobody's like giving me a check to do this, and so I've had to be, designer, marketer, social media person. I've had to do all those things in one, when necessarily that's not really my forte, and that's not really what I excel at, or even what I really like doing. So it is like highly stressful, and it can be very stressful. But if I tell you something that's like kept me going, is just like people like yourself and messages that I've received, and just the reaction that I've received from people, that I know that Looty as a project is going to surpass me, and it's going to be something that's going to be around after I'm long gone, right? And that's kind of something that's like kept me going.
Yeah. So in addition to that, as we're ending, we're almost done, is and there's so many key lessons in there, but what would you say, if someone was to ask you what are the key lessons, like lessons, things that have stood out that you would want to share with somebody who probably wants to do something similar, or just generally just go after their dream, as audacious, as strange as it may be? So what are the key lessons that you've learned through your journey?
Key lessons, one is that nobody on this planet can tell you that you can't do something. No one, except yourself. That's the only voice that you need to listen to, right? Secondly, I think repetition is like you have all these self-help books that will just tell you like, do this, do that. Repetition is just the main thing. In terms of, if you want to learn anything, just repeat. That's it. It's very, very simple. Repetition mixed with passion, right? Once you have passion for something, and then you can just have that repetition, you can learn how to do anything if you don't know how to do it. If you have that passion, and that fire, make that be your fuel, and just keep repeating, and you will learn anything, and you'll be amazed with yourself with the things that you can do. And it may be cliche, but when people say don't listen to the haters because they're all wrong, but it may be cliche, but don't listen to them, because like I said, the only voice that you need to listen to is that voice in your head. I've had so many people with this project tell me, oh, well, what's stopping someone else from doing this? Or someone else can just come along and do the same thing as you, and it won't be. I'm just like, cool, fine. Like, really, honestly, just they can do it. It's also that understanding where ideas come from and how ideas are created. I don't own this idea. It's not my idea. I'm just using my energy to execute it. I'm not saying I own this idea. This idea is something that should be, or is, owned by everybody. And if we start looking at ideas like that, in a way, like ideas are something that just exist, and they come to us, and it's down to us to like use that energy to like execute it. I think we'll have like it will be easier for you rather than you saying it's something that you own and it's like yours. Like a lot of people look at something like, oh, this project is my baby, or and then when it fails, it's like you've lost a child, which is very devastating. It's very devastating, So I think it's just good for your mental health to like maybe think about ideas in a different way.
I am challenged. I am so challenged. Wow. And you said it and it sounds so simple, but it's not, because people always think of, you're always being told to come up with the newest, freshest, most innovative idea, and have such ownership of the idea that when it goes bust, that's it. And you're like, oh my God, my ideas. But it's not your idea. You're literally a conduit, right? It's, you picked the idea. Okay, great. But it's not yours to own, which is really fantastic because it comes into an element of almost the abundance thinking of, that's just one idea. And it's not, I don't own it. There's a million, trillion other ideas out there.
That's it. And it's just like, and when you think about things like that, I feel like more ideas will come to you.
Yeah.
And then it's just down to you to decide which one that you want to take upon yourself and execute.
Hey, nothing to add. I'm just like, wow. This is why I enjoy having these conversations, because I get to get triggered and just listen to all these, because you can watch TV, you can read books, but I feel like the human interaction is where we learn the most. So yeah, Chidi, thank you. I mean, we've come to the end. Unless you have anything you have to add, I don't have any other questions, but I'm like, it's open. Any final words? Anything at all?
No final words. Just, I mean, you can check out the project, Looty.art. We're releasing on Nifty Tribe. We have our new collection coming on Nifty Tribe. So shout out to Nifty Tribe as well. But yeah, that's it. That's it for me.
Thank you for listening to the end of the Sand and Stars podcast. Really excited to have been with you in this episode, and I hope that you got inspired, you learned something that you probably had no idea about. So if you know anyone who is doing something that is out of the norm, interesting, impactful, very, very different, something that no one would ever think about, go ahead and share the details with me. You can email me at mbithekingori@gmail.com. It's also in the description, and we can get them on the podcast. Super excited to share the next episode with you, so stick on.